that moves. ENCA.com.
Construction bosses implicated in the collusion cartel should be personally prosecuted and held accountable. These are the words of former Aveng Chief Executive Officer Jardine. Speaking at a public lecture at Wits University last week, Jardine also argued it was right for civil claims to be launched against the guilty construction firms. He said, and I quote, "The prospect of jail time will act as a real deterrent to collusion." Jardine joins me now to discuss the construction cartel and other issues. Roger, welcome to the show. I have to say it was no one in the construction industry, since all this stuff came to light, has had the courage to stand up and say, this is what happened and this is how we fix it. What did you aim to achieve with this lecture?
Well, thank you. Firstly, I wanted to share my story. You know, I arrived at Aveng, and within weeks the first subpoena arrived. But you know, Justice, I've also been thinking a lot about my own citizenship and just the need to find a voice and to talk about things that are happening in our society. And here's something that was very close to me, and I really wanted to share that.
When you arrived at Aveng in 2008 and you were leading this massive company with 34,000 employees, suddenly for the first time in your life you're subpoenaed, you know, the first subpoena ever in your life. It started off as the subpoena to you, but how endemic, how widespread was the corruption that ultimately got to be revealed in the construction industry?
Well, look, I mean, I got the first subpoena in a few weeks after I joined. That was in the concrete products cartel. And then we moved on to steel, and construction was the sort of the big one at the end. So it sort of took on a life of its own. I really want to point one thing out, and not just about Aveng, where there are many fantastic people who I really loved working with, and I'm fiercely loyal to that company. But in the whole industry, there are thousands of people who had nothing to do with collusion, you know, and they built Soccer City and a whole range of other iconic projects and stepped back, and they were proud of their work. And there were clearly a few people who were in this close-knit group of people who were allegedly colluding. The commission has all of the evidence, they say. So, you know, behind all of this, I really would like South Africa not to forget that there are lots of good South Africans in these companies.
Let's talk about those people who were in these closed arrangements. You point out in your lecture that it goes back to 1973. How did it work?
Well, this particular cartel, they basically divided markets, they fixed prices, and as the behavior grew, we saw in the construction cartel, the commission tells us that the main mode of cartel behavior was cover pricing, which basically is where one bidder would give another bidder a price, and then they would shape the outcome. It would be a sham tender, basically, and the person who gave a lower price, the other person would know how to price their bid.
So basically,
who wins and
we
who
agree
loses.
that, okay, I'm going to say I'll do this job for 50 million rand, and you come in with a lower one. When I win it, I give you work behind the door.
Yes, now you must remember something. This isn't first-hand evidence I'm giving you, because
yeah,
I
of
had
course,
to
of course. You arrived there way after it
construct
happened,
this through reading the documents and hearing what the commission said, because, you know, in our case, we had to take the commission's word when they said they had evidence, because a number of people had left the company. But basically, that would seem the way it played out.
What is it, the way we do things in this country, the way we design bids, tenders, and so forth, that encourage such corruption? What caused it? What caused all these people to believe that we can do this and we can go on with it?
Well, firstly, you know, and in my lecture I spoke about this. I do think that the way we mobilize our companies around big national projects lends itself to a process where things go off the rails. I wondered aloud if there was a meeting after winning the World Cup between the government and the private sector where we discuss skills, finance, capacity, whether we would be sitting here today. And basically, the bulk of what I have to say is more focused on the future, because South Africa is planning, we are planning to roll out 4 trillion rand infrastructure program, and it would be quite sad if in 20 years' time we're debating the same issue again of collusion and corruption.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to fix that now.
I want to come to the future and your vision of how things should work. But let's just get to what has happened in the past. You refer to people who worked in companies that, and in particular individuals who were involved in this collusion, who have moved on to other jobs and so forth. What should happen in this particular instance with those people? Should they be locked up? Should those companies be banned from future work?
Yeah, this is an issue I feel quite strongly about. I don't think that the current system where companies pay fines and manage reputational damage for a long time to come is working as a deterrent. I think the Competition Commission have done well over the years, but I firmly believe unless there exists in the mind of a would-be colluder, that the chance of them being caught and being sent to jail is quite high. Then you won't see what I've seen, where people simply change jobs and carry on totally unscathed. There needs to be more accountability around this issue, I feel.
And the banning of companies that have been found guilty, should they be banned? How should we make sure that these companies also discourage this sort of behavior inside their organizations?
Yeah, I don't think banning these companies is a practical way forward for our country. I understand that South Africans are angry and there's a desire for justice, and there clearly is a view that the fines aren't enough. You know, this isn't the first investigation of its type globally. In the Netherlands and the UK, they had similar investigations. And interestingly enough, in the UK, they specifically recommended that companies not be banned from public sector tenders. What I've recommended or suggested is that the government and the private sector, when it comes to a public sector tender, needs to enter into a pact where parties agree, both parties, that no one will collude, bribe, will disclose commissions and all fees paid, and if they still violate that, they will be thrown out of the system.
These integrity pacts, do you feel that among business people, among politicians, that this suggestion may be taken up, that it has traction?
Well, I'm hoping so, because if we don't have, you know, we need to go the extra mile, because corruption, and my lecture focused on public sector corruption and private sector corruption. And I think it's one of the issues in our society today. And unless we put it in intensive care and go the extra mile, we are really on a terrible path, which we will all regret as South Africans.
When I read your lecture, I'm amazed that one of the things that that seems to come through. It seems as if since 1994 we've had a relationship between government, labor, and business that has continued to sour, and now we're at a point where it's pointing fingers. They are corrupt, they are corrupt, they are corrupt, and so forth. How do we fix that relationship?
Well, look, I think we need to have a very serious national discussion. We cannot have a situation where the business points at government and vice versa. So, and also, I do think that we need to overcome some form of ideological Cold War between the government and the private sector that I feel exists. And the way to do that, you know, we don't have to agree with each other, and we can agree to disagree on a whole range of things. But surely we can agree that we're South Africans and we love our country, and we need to find common ground to move forward.
The CEO of PPC, Ketso has suggested that we need an economic codesa of sorts to drive forward the problems, well, to come to a solution with of all the problems we have. Do you support such an idea?
I do. I think any meaningful forum or platform to bring the social partners together to sketch a vision for our country. You know, we have a rich history that we draw on, but my view is that our future is going to be informed by that history, but it will be shaped by vision, and we need vision going forward. And I think a meeting of that nature can certainly help us. Now, we do have a vision. It's called the National Development Plan, which needs to be refined. Every South African should try to make it workable, but we're certainly at an inflection point.
Yeah. Roger Jardine, thanks so much for your bravery in speaking out on these issues, and thanks for coming to the show.
You're welcome. Thank you.
After the break, our winner and loser of the week. Stay with us.
News that moves. ENCA.com.